Hey everyone, Mitch coming in from the Commander Score Studio. Welcome to the show. First up, hope you've been having a fantastic day. Yeah, things are cold but good in Minnesota up here. Oh yeah, it's been good. Got my tea as usual. Oh yeah, it's a land of 10,000 likes if you didn't, although it's like 14,000. Regardless, they're not about, being exact. It's just about, the statement of we have a lot of lakes. Good for us. But what really is the difference between a lake and a pond? Anyways, that's not the big change that we're talking about today. Not about lakes and ponds, although we'll get into that later, I'm sure, in a different episode. Probably not. But yeah, on today's episode, we're going to be talking about a potential big change that was proposed by Mark Rosewater. I don't know about proposed, but kind of brought up in a way. And yeah, before I blab on any further and get off topic, let's talk about what exactly it is. So, on Blogatog, Mark Rosewater's blog, Mark asked, should enchantments have their own frame? With 3 options. Number 1, yes, all the time. Number 2, yes, but only in sets where it is mechanically relevant. And number 3, no. Not sure exactly why. I guess it makes sense why you'd say yes all the time to be specific versus, the other one, which is, you don't really have to say be specific, but yeah, yes, no, or yes, but only where it is needed, essentially. So, this is a potentially big change, at least I think it is, when it comes to actually being able to identify things on the board, especially in a format like Commander where you have, again, 3 times as many opponents that you usually have in other formats, right? You've got 3 opponents versus just 1, and trying to identify everything on the board, especially with these, some of the play states that can happen in a game of Commander where someone's got a ton of things on their board. You can have 4 players with a ton of things on their board. Being able to quickly and easily identify, again, if you've got something that can destroy, say, an enchantment, being able to identify all the enchantments very easily could be pretty helpful, or something maybe that buffs, based on enchantments or whatnot. There are different things, of course, that care about, specific permanent types. And yeah, by being more specific on how those look and having a generic look to them, for the framing, at least I should say, that could help with identification. Now, I don't know if I should be spoiling this right now or at the end, and I'm just going to be doing it now, but I clicked into and I voted on what I thought, and I got to see what percentages people think. And this might actually go through because, well, according to the Tumblr results, the poll results, and I did vote yes all the time. But yeah, 62.5% say yes all the time. 24% say yes, but only in sense where it's mechanically relevant. We'll talk about a specific kind of set that has that. And when it comes to no, that's 13.5%. So those who want it all the time is over 50% at basically, 63% essentially. Those who don't want it all the time, if you just add those other two together, that's what, like 37, 38% essentially. So yeah, the vast majority of, the majority, I should say, the vast majority of Commander players out there do think it should happen all the time. The vast majority, I would say, do want a specific treatment in one way or the other, and only 13% say no, never. Not at all. Enchantments should look how they, used to look essentially, and not change, depending on a set or permanently overall. Now, I will be including in the link in the description, so you can vote on your own as well and see how this poll kind of changes essentially. But yeah, it's interesting. Or I guess actually there is a time limit on this one. Sorry. So you probably, unless you've already voted, you might not be able to vote. I kind of missed that part at the bottom where it includes 2,000 votes, which obviously is not the entirety of Magic players out there. Nowhere near it. So yeah, I should mention as well, it's a small sample size. So we shall see if they take this and then move forward with these results, or maybe they probe a little further to try to find out, maybe in a bigger way instead of just a Tumblr vote essentially, and just find out from players, maybe with emails or whatnot, to actually find out should they make this change. It's one that I do think can happen though. Let's talk about just kind of the evolution of this, and just and yeah, again, how it can be pretty relevant. So first up, I don't know why I chose Urza's Saga, but I did, just kind of on just showing differences between artifacts, enchantments, and also creatures. And the card that came to my mind was like, oh, what's an old artifact, just to kind of show how they used to look. Thran Turbine. Don't know why that one came in my head. It just did. Okay, so that's where I started. Regardless, yeah, obviously artifacts kind of stand out because they had a different treatment, from basically all the other things. I mean, they looked different. They, all had, the same kind of framing. And I guess the same could be said about all the colors, essentially. But artifacts obviously are different in the way they're treated, as a permanent in the field than, an enchantment or a creature, which also are on the field, but they're harder to identify because, again, a Peregrine Drake has the exact same, at least the old ones, I should say, the exact same frame as against, like, Attunement, which I don't know why, again, Attunement came to my head as an enchantment, but it did. A really cool, weird card. Return to your hand, draw 3, discard 4. Kind of cool. Card that actually used to be a lot more budget-friendly, and there were some pretty crazy things you can do with it, but no longer budget-friendly, I don't believe so anyways. Regardless, that is off topic. If you are trying to, again, identify, hey, what's different here? Pretty easy to identify, okay, that's an artifact. And then when it comes to actually a creature versus an enchantment, more difficult to determine, which is which. You have to read, which one it is. Which, yeah, I mean, definitely, again, if you're playing, 1v1, it's easier to do that. If you're playing against 3 other players, there's a lot of crazy things that can happen on the board, and it just becomes more difficult. So yeah, there are definitely some treatments that could be utilized, and we'll talk about them, well, right now, because, yeah, also, when it came to, okay, those that voted, yes, but only in specific sets, right? I mean, these specific kinds of sets that have utilized, the enchantment treatment were Theros, and Theros Beyond Death, essentially, right? When it came to, enchantments having, a big impact, a big, presence in those sets, and talking about enchantment, specific cards, like, a Doomwake Giant, which has Constellation. Whenever it or another enchanter is about under control, creatures your opponents control get -1/-1 till end of turn. So you can identify this as an enchantment. I think specifically enchantment creatures, actually, this treatment was used for this, I can't remember what they exactly call the treatment on the outside, but it's pretty beautiful, like those little stars and sparkles kind of in the background too, which is good. I mean, again, this is just an easier way to say, okay, if I see those, stars and sparkles or whatever, it's an enchantment. Oh, okay, so, you can just identify that it might be enchantment creature. I mean, actually, it only has been, again, I believe, up until this point, enchantment creature specifically. But if you applied this to all enchantments, you can be like, okay, at the very least, I know that it is enchantment. So again, if I have an effect that, benefits from having more enchantments in play, I can easily count them. Or, if an opponent, wants to get rid of one of my enchantments, they can more easily identify what is an enchantment. It just makes things easier for players. We'll talk about some potential framing issues that can happen that makes it less easy, but we'll, get to that in a second. Eidolon of Blossoms, again, constellation specific. Hey, I care about enchantments. I am an enchantment. But then you even get Arasta, the Endless Web, which displays 2 different ways that framing can help. Arasta is an enchantment, obviously, because of, again, of that, I think it's the Nyx treatment. I can't remember. Some of the comments will let me know what that treatment is called. But again, these sparkles. Okay, it's an enchantment. Cool, it's an enchantment creature. Also, though, at the top, you can see, again, that the framing that is different because it is a legendary creature. And that, again, that was a change that happened at some point as well that made things a bit easier for players to identify as legendary creatures became more and more important with Commander's presence, essentially. It just makes it so, and with other cards that care about you having legendary creatures and whatnot. So, yeah, or legendary permanents. So it just makes it easier to identify those things for players. It just makes it more apparent. And it's something that really doesn't get in the way. It just kind of is an additive. It doesn't make things more difficult. It doesn't add your cognitive load, really. It tries to help reduce that. And that is a huge thing, and something, again, that these, these small tweaks, these, framing tweaks can help for players in the future. And again, that's the reason that I personally voted yes, because, hey, I think anything that can make things easier, especially for new players getting into the game, trying to take all of this in and then be like, okay, well, enchantments supposed to look like this way or that way or that way. And you can be able to actually just identify them more easily throughout the board. Even if you don't know exactly what a card does, you know what's an enchantment versus a creature versus an artifact. So yeah, that's just kind of my reasoning behind it. But yeah, I mean, let's talk about, other ones as well and kind of how they've evolved. I mean, Athreos got a passage, Athreos Shroud Veiled. You can even see with, those Theros gods and how they changed from the first set to the second one. In the first one, again, we have that treatment where you can tell, okay, it's an enchantment. Cool. It's got that, the Nyx treatment or whatever it's called essentially in the background, right? But also, it changed from the first second to the second set. Also, we have this framing difference on top. Okay, so it is legendary now. We have that addition. We have that change that makes it even more easy to identify what exactly it is. Just by looking at that, you can be like, okay, yeah, okay, legendary enchantment creature. You don't know it's got a god, but it's a legendary enchantment, a creature as well. Again, it depends on kind of how they treat those, because again, at this point, I believe they've only done, and correct me in the comments if I'm wrong on that, but I believe they've only done enchantment creatures with this specific kind of treatment. I mean, next up, how about, even on lands, legendary lands, being able to identify those. Those, again, can be relevant for certain commanders out there. Nykthos Shrine to Nyx came out a long time ago, right? I mean, back in Theros. And this one does not have that legendary border on the top. But Sager Who Endures came out last year. It does have that legendary border on the top. You can easily identify that this one is a legendary land. And yeah, I mean, when you've got, 10 lands in play, it's just a lot harder to identify, okay, yeah, this is also a legendary permanent. Trying to keep track of all that stuff, it's just another thing that can make things a bit easier for players out there. I mean, also, even on the same card, we can see a difference, right, in kind of how this new framing can help, right? Urborg, Tomb of Yawgmoth, I can't talk. Urborg, Tomb of Yawgmoth. There we go. A legendary land. Again, on the left, we see an M15. This legendary border was not a thing back then. Makes it more easy to identify, though, on the right as a legendary permanent. Again, a small change, one that does not hurt it. It's just one that literally just helps. It's one that tries to reduce cognitive load. Instead of being like, okay, I have to read through all my cards, see which ones are legendary, or memorize which ones are legendary, if I just kind of scan and just try to look for that border on the top, that can definitely help me. We can even see this, of course, on commanders as well. Obviously, Atali Primal Storm when it came out in Ixalan, or is it Rivals of Ixalan? I think it's Rivals of Ixalan. There we go. It does not have that legendary border on top. We can see the change, though, that now, yes, it does. And obviously, if it's your commander, yeah, you're going to know it's legendary, sure. But there are also, again, commanders out there that care about legendary tribal and that kind of stuff, like the new Joda, right? Being able to identify the number of legendary permanents or whatnot on the battlefield or when you hit them or whatnot it is. Then you are able to essentially, see, okay, yeah, it's got that board on the top. It is legendary. Again, same thing can be beneficial when it comes to enchantments as well. When it comes to just being able to easily identify, okay, how many enchantments do I have in play? I've got this one effect that cares about the number of enchantments that I have. Cool. Ancestral Massacre or whatnot, that kind of stuff too. So that can definitely be a big benefit. I mean, also, a different kind of permanent type that is more easy to identify on the battlefield as well than, say, the old ways that we treated, enchantments and creatures. Well, Planeswalkers. Planeswalkers have a unique framing that allows them to just be more easily identified right away as a Planeswalker. Starting from some of the oldest Planeswalkers like Jace the Mind Sculptor, right? You've got, the different kind of frame, the curves on the edges essentially, as well as, all those, loyalty abilities too, which obviously give it away as well. But then on top of that, I believe this is with all Planeswalkers. Please correct me in the comments if I'm wrong on this, but also, part of the actual picture, Jace's head, slightly is out of that actual frame, kind of, a way to show how powerful this character is, essentially, that they're not completely within that picture frame essentially. So yeah, from that to Garruk to even some of the newer ones like Ajani, you can identify that they are Planeswalkers when on the battlefield. There's no confusion really between this and an enchantment or a creature, because yeah, it's just pretty apparent that this is different looking, and it's just easy to identify that. And that again helps players, whether they're players that have been playing for years and years and years, or new players who are like easily to identify these different types of permanents. And also, I guess this is kind of a little off topic, but not really. Atraxa, the brand new Atraxa that just came out, right, has battle as one of the newly listed kinds of words of a card. I don't know what battle is going to be, if it's going to be a permanent card or not. Maybe it is, but yeah, if it is a permanent, that's adding some more cognitive load, right? Different kinds of permanents on the field, different kinds of ways to interact. So yeah, we'll have to see what that's going to be and how that actually is going to look. Is going to have different framing, and again, it matters a little bit less when it comes to instant sorceries, because well, they could actually do the framing a little bit different on those, though, just you kind of immediately know if it's instant or a sorcery. But you also, aren't trying to keep track of those on the field. Those are not things that, someone casts it, cool, okay, that happened. It's going to go to the graveyard, though. And yeah, there are certain things with framing that might help with that being different, but more so when it comes to just permanents being on the field, there are more ways that can be impactful for players to know easily what they are. Moving on, when it comes to artifacts as well, things have changed since those, Thran Turbine days. Again, I don't know why I brought that one up, but yeah, Soul Ring, we can see, the typical, artifact frame that we see on an artifact, but things have also changed with artifacts where now not all artifacts are colorless. Not all artifacts, abide by that anymore. Like Esper Sentinel. Esper Sentinel is a white card, and yeah, it again still has that same basic, artifact border where you can easily identify that. But also, it has a tint of white to it as well. So you can tell, okay, it's a white card as well. And on top of that, it is an artifact. So you see kind of, the kind of evolution of these and still being able to easily identify, okay, yeah, that is an artifact. So again, if I cast something that destroys all artifacts, it's pretty easy to identify that that is going to get destroyed as well. Versus if it didn't have that border, that might be a bit more difficult to determine. So yeah, it's kind of interesting how we see, this actually apply to artifacts. We haven't seen kind of this application when it comes to enchantments and like even enchantment creatures outside of like a Theros. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. But yeah, if you are to look at a Smothering Tithe or a Sun Titan, those obviously are two different kinds of, permanents, one an enchantment, one a creature. They basically have the exact same border, though. I mean, these are from different sets and whatnot, but yeah, you can't identify if one is an enchantment or one is a creature just by looking at the card without actually reading it, unless you know what it is, obviously. But without actually kind of reading the card, it is more difficult to identify than, say, Heliod. You know that's an enchantment, again, because of that border around it. And again, with the legendary, border on top as well, the legendary framing on it. So yeah, you're able to more easily identify, okay, yeah, this is a legendary enchantment, creature. So yeah, again, these kind of small changes I think can make a big difference. It can make a massive impact. And there's also just kind of a word of caution, for the future, or just a tale of caution, I guess, kind of when treatments can go wrong. And I actually already had an episode where I talked about like the Phyrexian language on certain cards and that happening in the draft format. And yeah, check that one out if you have not seen that one. Then that's kind of one way that things can go wrong. But with framing specifically, in a recent product that was incredibly popular and that a lot of players out there really, really like, there is something that even I experienced while playing against one of those decks, essentially, where some of the framing is just not quite right. And I know that they wanted to get, this is the Warhammer 40k, I should stop beating around the bush. The Warhammer 40k framing is just, well, let's talk about it by showing it real quick. So, Necron Deathmark is an artifact creature from that. And at the border, you can be like, okay, that's like kind of like artifact-y, right? Okay, cool. It's different than your typical one that you'll see. And I'm sure they want to be like, okay, yeah, Warhammer. All right, we need to kind of get the feeling of Warhammer into the framing as well. But by doing that, there are certain kind of unintended consequences, especially for the Necron deck, the mono black deck. Yeah, because then we look at the same treatment. Essentially, it's slightly different, not really by much on any of these, though, with an enchantment like Biotransference. I mean, I can't really tell that that's, an enchantment versus the other one being an artifact. They look very similar, actually, those borders. So the artifacts kind of look like everything else, and therefore everything else kind of looks like an artifact. And there are plenty of things that, work with artifacts in that deck. And yeah, you might get confused, like, oh, Biotransference, okay, that's an artifact. Oh, wait, no, that's not an artifact. That's an enchantment. Even a sorcery like Dread Return, yeah, the exact same one as Biotransference. Again, there's no difference between those two. Evolving Wilds, even the lands kind of look like they have that artifact border-ish, right? So it's just kind of hard to tell what is what, really, and that's kind of where framing can go wrong. Again, the framing is such a small piece of Magic, but it is something that can make a massive difference, and it can make things a lot easier. Again, Magic is a game that has a ton of cognitive load in any kind of way to make it easier for players. Again, especially in a format like Commander, where you've got so many players, so many cards, so many things going on, and so many things on the battlefield. Yeah, any way that you can kind of, reduce that cognitive load, I am for. If you can do it right, and again, with those, Nyx treatments or whatever they're called again for enchantments, I think that's a great way to go about it, a great way to change it up, a great way to, make enchantments more easily identifiable for all players out there. I am all for it. But yeah, make sure, we should stay tuned to this to see if it's going to happen in the future. But yeah, which way would you vote? Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts are on this. Am I completely off base? What would you vote? Again, would you vote yes for everything? Would you vote just yes for specific sets? Again, like a Theros, where it really matters. Or would you vote no? Do you not want them to have a different treatment? So yeah, let me know in the comments below. And of course, as always, thanks again and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG Player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.